Okay, so good evening everybody. We're here at the Jesmond local Hustings event in Jesmond Library. I'm with the pre-show panel now. We have Tony Waterston, Bernard Trafford and Callum Redhead. So could you just introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of an idea of your connection with Jesmond?
Okay, well I'm Tony Waterston, I'm chair of the Jesmond Residents Association. I'm really in touch with a lot of residents' concerns, so I was really going to bring that up, things that have come through us as to issues that we'd like to hear from the prospective councillors tonight.
Great.
I'm Bernard Trafford, I'm head of the Royal Grammar School just down the road in Jesmond, has been for 109 years I think, and I'm a Jesmond resident as well. I walk to work, so I live right in the heart of Jesmond as well.
I'm Callum Redhead. I'm a student at Newcastle University. I'm also president of the Law Society, which is one of the largest societies, student societies in Newcastle University, and I've lived in Jesmond for 2 years.
Great, thank you. So Tony, what sort of issues are you and the residents hoping to hear tonight?
Well, there are three things that have come up that I think it would be really good to hear about from our members and members of the committee. The first is about connecting with students. And many of the students here that we've heard from feel that the councillors don't make any effort when the new students come in to connect with them. So I'd like to ask the councillors about how they would connect with students, really particularly in October when the new term begins.
Yes, of course.
I've got two others. Shall I mention them now?
Yes, please.
Okay, well the second is about care of the parks and green spaces. In the future, how do they plan to deal with that when council cuts the funds for looking after parks and green spaces? How would they go about that? How would they tackle it really? I think there's an expectation that residents will do it, but that's not really going to be easy. And the third one is about rubbish, and this is particularly in areas where bins are not well used, where the wheelie bins are not well used, that rubbish collects around about them. And there's objections for many people to the use of communal bins. So what proposals would these prospective councillors have to actually improve the situation in the areas where rubbish accumulates?
Great, thank you. And Bernard, in terms of perhaps education or just...
Well, yeah, I've got, well, you can have both. But two things. The first is we're sitting in one of the issues here, a library closed by the council, run by volunteers. That's marvellous, and in a place like Jesmond, how great that we can do that. But I really have concerns about the way choices have been presented. I know they're tough times and budgets are being slashed by central government, but just remember that 2 years ago, was it, we were told that all arts funding would have to be cut completely. There was no alternative. It's either that or you're cutting children's care or whatever. Government isn't about either ors like that. That was playing with emotions. And I think we need more honesty, openness and imagination about keeping support for the arts. The arts thrive in Newcastle and they won't if we keep cutting. And what about libraries like this? Is it right that it just has to be volunteer-led? Perhaps it's a good thing, but it seems to me we should be more imaginative and not actually posture and simply set ourselves against central government. So that's the sort of education and arts for me. And the other thing is, very selfishly, in 2012 my school had 3 once-in-a-100-year floods in 3 months. There's a lot of millions of litres of water going through the school. We're now finally, after 2 years, 2 months from the council, we got permission to build our little flood walls, which cost us more money, and we're running late on it because they took so long. And I think I'd like to know what councillors are going to do about joined up thinking about flooding, not just in the patch of my school, but in Jesmond, which has suffered.
Great, thank you. And Callum?
Well, first I would definitely agree with Tony about engagement with students by councillors early on and at the right time. I think that's important because I think some of the problems associated with students in Jesmond are about a lack of ownership with the community and a lack of engagement with the community. And the second point would be about student accommodation. Many students, including myself, came here and rented private accommodation for the first time ever. I think I'm concerned that most students aren't aware of their rights as a tenant, and that substandard property can become the norm, and that landlords or estate agents entering properties without sufficient notice is quite common. So I think sort of making sure students are aware of their rights as tenants, and that those rights are enforced.
Great, thank you. One thing that's come up quite a lot in the media is voter engagement, voter registration. In terms of Callum students, for example, do you think students are a bit disillusioned? I mean, Jesmond is 50% student population. If everybody were registered, there would be an enormous amount of votes.
I think it's been mixed. I think the university, or certainly Newcastle University, has been quite proactive. There's been a lot of certainly voter registration events and sort of marketing around that. I think they probably have succeeded in pushing a few people to register to vote who may not have done it before. I think there are probably people who would just never have voted. So on the whole, I think certainly in terms of registration, it's been quite positive this year. In terms of engagement, I think it's difficult. I know some of the parties and some of the councillors do directly try to engage with students, certainly through some of the stuff that comes through the doors. I think overall it's been positive, but the student engagement is always going to be quite mixed.
And Bernard, how about at your school? Is there much interest in politics in the pupils?
We have, interestingly, it's quite a big A-level subject for us, but the average students, no, I think they probably share the same sort of dissatisfaction and disengagement as young people right across the country and across sort of school types and everything else.
Great. And Tony, what do you think about the student voting engagement? Do you think, because as I said, 50% of students are living in Jesmond, it's almost, if the students aren't voting here, it's almost half the voices not being heard. What do you think about it?
Well, I think it's to do with, it's two things. One is that students really aren't sure, don't understand really, in my perception, what the issues are for them, and if they're not connected up early, then they don't really feel it's worth doing it, and that's to do with general issues as well as registration. The other side of it is what efforts are made, and we in the JRA haven't made that much effort in the past to actually connect up with new students, nor I think have counsellors. And I think so we would like to make a bigger effort really at the time that students come, to ensure that they do know what the community activities are, how they can participate, and really try and get them on board at an early stage. And I'd really like to hear what prospective counsellors would do about it.
Yes. And for all of you, what do you think, how important are local politics compared to, I mean, presumably a lot of people will be voting in the general election, but do you think that sometimes local politics and council elections are overlooked by people?
I think certainly by students.
By students, yeah.
I don't think the vast majority realise the significance of local elections and how much of an impact the potential impact there is. When you're living here for the vast majority of the year, I think there is a real lack of understanding of local politics.
Yeah, just looking at myself, I think I realised I was middle-aged when I started really feeling strongly about my bins.
Yes, I think there's a problem in participation in general, and that really should be improved, because it's actually much easier to influence what happens locally than it is nationally. But there does tend to be a focus on sort of short-term things and less on longer-term things. And I think it would be good to see a focus on the longer-term issues, which are really important, and people can make an influence on them.
And just while we're here, I might throw a slightly controversial one your way. What's your take on the Acorn Road situation?
Well, the JRA
maybe we don't have enough time to discuss it.
The JRA didn't take a position because it was waiting for the people's opinions to come out. We have actually asked for a review of the consultation on the grounds that really perhaps it didn't really get to the bottom of what people's opinions are, although a bigger effort was made than has been made in the past. So we'd like to see some review and actually trying to really get to the bottom of really what people genuinely think.
Is that an issue that you'll be hoping to hear a little bit about tonight?
Yes, definitely.
Maybe? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for your time this evening. I think we should be passing over pretty soon to the candidates. So thank you to our panel, everybody.